So this morning, we are going to continue our message series entitled Follow Me. And over the last several weeks, we have discovered that with all of your questions, with all of your skepticism, with all of your doubts and all of your uncertainty, even with all of your failures, all of your sin, Jesus invites us into a relationship with him. He does not invite us into a religion. He invites us into a relationship with him. And with all of these failures and faults, Jesus still says, follow me. Follow me. And last week we took a look at one of the benefits of following Jesus. That as we grow in our relationship with him, we gain this God confidence, this faith over fear, where faith overwhelms any type of fear that we have. And one of the burst-off-isms that I shared with you last week is, it's all good, even when it's not. In other words, it's all good because of the truth that I'm loved, because of the truth that I'm forgiven, because of the truth I have the ultimate victory in Christ. It's all good. No matter what I experience in this world, no matter what I'm struggling with, it's all good, even when it's not. Even when it's not going to my plan. And so this morning, as we delve into week number 4, I know some of you have got some really big questions out there. And I know this is the question that you have been struggling with from the very beginning. I mean, you have really been pondering this. You have really been thinking about this. What should Christians wear? I mean, I'm a follower of Jesus, or I want to be a follower of Jesus, so what do I wear? What should Christians wear? I mean, should I be walking around in my clerical all the time? Should we be walking around with shirts that say faith over fear, or Jesus is the hope of the world? What should Christians wear? Because the truth is, you can tell who somebody follows by looking at what they wear, right? I mean, for instance, who does this individual follow? I mean, go ahead. Who does it follow? Yeah, Green Bay Packers, right? And I know that there's a couple of you in this room right now that have dressed up like this. And here in Central Florida, if you see someone dressed up like a gator or flying the blue and orange colors, you know that they're a Florida Gator, that they follow the University of Florida. Or here's one a little bit more difficult. Who is this woman following? Anybody know? Right, Brazil, the soccer team, the Brazilian soccer team. Okay, this one might be even a little bit more difficult. Who's this guy following? The Cleveland Browns, because they haven't done anything. They haven't done anything in decades, is what happened here. Okay, but the way we dress can show who we follow, right? For instance, who are these gentlemen following? Anybody know? Buddha, right? They're Buddhist priests, okay, and they're following Buddha. Or maybe you've seen this around town at times. They follow Muhammad or Islam. Or one of the fastest growing religions in the world right now are these guys. Anybody know who they are? Sikhs, right? They're following Sikhism. And so what should a Christian wear? And I think there's two ends of the spectrum, right? One of us, we could be wearing, the Saved by Grace sweatshirts and Jesus is King. I mean, that's one end of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum is this. And we've seen this before too, haven't we? God hates you. I mean, just makes me want to run to them and follow them, doesn't it? That's sarcasm in case you didn't pick it up. It's interesting because the Apostle Paul tells us what to wear. Now, that should probably make you a little bit nervous because Paul lived some 2,000 years ago before they invented zippers, okay? And Paul is going to tell us what to wear, okay? And now, context matters here a little bit because Paul learned from the disciples, right? Paul would have known Peter and James, John and Andrew. I mean, he would have known the whole gang of them. And Paul learned from the apostles what it was that Jesus taught. Paul delved into some very deep study before he went out on his missionary journeys. And we all know about Paul. We know how famous that Paul is. We know that the impact, what impact Paul had on our world. Okay, now Paul gleaned this teaching from Jesus. Okay, now Jesus, I'm going to delve into John chapter 13. Okay, Jesus is in the upper room with his disciples. It's Thursday night. Jesus recognized the truth that he had just witnessed his final sunset. He knew that the very next morning would bring his own impending death. And so Jesus is talking to his disciples. At this point, Judas had already left to betray Jesus. So Jesus is talking to the remaining 11 disciples. These are some of his last words. I mean, this is some extremely important stuff. And he says, "My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come." Some of your translations might say, "my little children." See, he's referring to a small child who's lost, who's separated from their parents. They go into a full panic, and they're crying, and they're running to and fro in search of their parents. So Jesus is telling his disciples, "My little children, you're going to be looking for me. And just as I told you, where I am going, you cannot follow." To which I'm sure the disciples were thinking, but Jesus, we're your disciples. I mean, that's the very definition of a disciple, isn't it? A follower of Jesus. A disciple is someone who follows Jesus, who learns all that they can, and then they go out and they do the work. They continue the work of the teacher. Jesus, we're your disciples. We're your followers. What do you mean we can't follow you? And then Jesus continues, "A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." And I'm sure the disciples, just like you are, thinking, that wasn't a new command, love one another. I mean, they've heard that over and over and over again. But Jesus raises the standard here. He says, don't love one another as you love one another. Don't love one another as somebody has loved you. Jesus is saying, I want you to love one another as I have loved you. Love one another as I have loved you. Remember Matthew? Remember, you were sitting in a tax collector's booth, Matthew. You were in the very act of sinning. You were betraying your fellow countrymen. You were sinning against God. And before Peter could spit on you, I said, Matthew, follow me. Or how about you, Nathaniel? Remember what you said when you first heard about me? I mean, come on, Nathaniel. Do you remember how you reacted? You said, Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Nathaniel, you dissed my entire family. You made fun of my family. You made fun of my fellow townspeople. You dished where I came from, Nathaniel. And yet Jesus said to Nathaniel, follow me. We're called to love as Jesus loved us. So let's just get real practical here real quick, okay? I'm going off on a 2-minute tangent here. Okay? Jesus loved us by being present and serving. As followers of Jesus, you and I, we're called to love others by spending intentional time with people, by giving them our attention. We're called to meet the practical needs of people without seeking self-recognition or puffing ourselves up. Jesus loved us by speaking the truth and by forgiving. In the same way, you and I, as followers of Jesus, are called to love others by correcting gently and encouraging them faithfully. We're called to offer grace and reconciliation, forgiveness, just as we have been forgiven. Jesus loved us by showing compassion and by praying for us. Jesus was always going off to a solitary place to pray. As followers of Jesus, you and I, we're called to love by seeing and helping those who are hurting. We're called to love others by interceding consistently for them. Jesus loved us by sacrificing and by encouraging faith. As followers of Jesus, you and I are called to love by giving of our time, by giving of our resources, by giving of ourselves, by helping others grow in Christ. And it might be as simple as taking what you hear here this morning and going and sharing it with a neighbor. We're called to live love, just as Jesus loved us. Jesus said, a new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this love, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. I mean, Maundy Thursday, his last message to his disciples. And he says, this is what I want you to do. This is how I want you to clothe yourselves. This is how I want you to live and how I want you to interact with other people. And if you do this, if you love one another as I have loved you, the world is going to know you're my disciples. If you love one another as I have loved you, you're going to make an impact. You're going to make a change, not only in your families and in your community, but you're going to make a change in the world because people are going to see you. And you're going to be different than the rest of the world. And they're going to say, I want that. They're going to see how you live your life. And by the way you live your life, you're going to be a witness of my love. And then good old impetuous foot in the mouth Peter, right? Peter said, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Peter missed the entire point. Jesus is talking about loving one another, and Peter is still 10 minutes back. What do you mean I can't follow you? What do you mean I can't go where you're going? I think oftentimes, straight up, you and I are just like Peter. I think oftentimes we miss the point. Because the truth is, this whole love one another thing, we've heard that before, right? I mean, I've preached it. I'm sure you've heard it over and over and over again. But my friends, love one another as I have loved you, that's not lip service. That's not just some church talk that you expect the preacher to talk about. Jesus said, this is how I want you to live your life. And I know many of you are thinking, yeah, but Jesus, I got my own issues. I got a whole bunch of things that weigh heavily upon my mind and upon my heart. And if I'm constantly out serving, and if I'm giving, if I'm taking care of others, how am I going to take care of myself, Jesus? How can I love one another as you loved me? See, the gravitational pull of religion, the natural gravitational pull to religion is toward self and rule keeping rather than relationship building. I mean, that's the natural pull. Toward self, right, and rule keeping. And why? Why is the gravitational pull toward rule keeping? Because it keeps us in charge. That's why. I don't know about you, but I want to be in charge. And when we're in charge, when we follow the rules, we say to ourselves, I'm going to follow the rules, God. I'm in charge of my own life. I'm going to follow the rules. And then when we break the rules, man, we just feel really bad about it, and we ask God for forgiveness. And everything is copacetic. And then we're going to follow the rules again, and then we break the rules. We feel bad about it, and we ask for forgiveness. And as long as God and I are buds, everything's good. As long as I love God, I'm good, but I can hate you. As long as I love Jesus, as long as I love God, man, everything's all great. But I don't have to love you, especially you who live a different lifestyle than I live. Especially you who believes a different way than I believe. You who's of a different culture or a different language. I don't have to love you. See, we don't love as Jesus calls us to love. We love God, but not so much people. The gravitational pull of religion is toward rule keeping. It's toward tradition. It's toward ritual, and it's toward self. And don't get me wrong, rule keeping is not bad. I mean, tradition is not bad. Ritual is not bad at all. They all have their place. But when those things take a priority over and above relationship, that's when things are askew. And the truth is, some of you in this sanctuary this morning, you have been mistreated in the name of religion. Or you know someone who has been mistreated in the name of religion. Where somebody from a church said, well, my church teaches, and so you cannot play. Yeah, some of you have been mistreated in the name of Jesus. And I sit back and think, those are the very people who Jesus died for. To forgive them of their sin, so that they could know of his grace and his love. See, as followers of Jesus, you and I are called to love others, not as they deserve, but as Jesus loved us. And how did he love us? Sacrificially, unconditionally. He just showered us with his grace and his forgiveness. See, I'm kind of picking on us today, but you know what? In the church, it's easy for us to confuse self-discipline with discipleship. Self-discipline meaning I get up every morning, I do my Bible study. I go to Bible study on Wednesday mornings. I go to Bible study on Thursday mornings. I go to church on Sundays. I tithe. I donate money. I give some time to some volunteer projects. And we confuse that self-discipline with discipleship. Have you ever met a grouchy Christian? You know who I'm talking about? Don't point at him. Don't point at him. But you know who I'm talking about? Okay, because when I put it, I immediately came to mind some grouchy Christians, right? Man, they know the Bible through and through. I mean, they're constantly in it. They can quote verses to you, but they're so grouchy. Why? Because it's easier to follow rules than to focus on relationship. And Jesus calls us to relationship. Now, Paul takes us back to the basics. Remember, Paul, this great missionary, went around the Mediterranean basin on 3 journeys, right? Planting churches wherever he went. One of his students, Epaphras, he planted a church in a town called Colossae. Colossae is in modern-day Turkey. It's about 100 miles away from Ephesus. In the first century, Colossae was this booming, important kind of town. Today, straight up, it's a hill of dirt. It ceased to exist. Well, Paul wrote this to the church of Colossae. He went back to the teaching of Jesus in John chapter 13, and this is what Paul shares. He said, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves. He's writing to the church. He's writing to God's chosen people who are holy. That means forgiven, having the hope and the assurance of everlasting life. We're set apart. We're loved. And he says, as someone who's loved, as someone who's forgiven, as someone who has the ultimate victory, clothe yourselves. In other words, I want you to put on these things. Okay? And he says, clothe yourselves with compassion. Now, we've talked about compassion before. Okay, in our culture, we have this statement where I love you with all of my heart. I love you with all of my heart, right? Well, in the Greek, that word compassion, and here in this verse, Paul actually uses he uses 2 different words to describe it. The word for compassion actually means the bowels of mercy. It's your innards. Have you ever experienced that? Where you were so overwhelmed with emotion, or you saw something that just upset you so bad that it got you right in the gut. It almost made you sick to your stomach. Paul says, I want you to have compassion. That's this deep sympathy, this empathy that gets right down into the gut. Every time that Jesus had compassion, read the scriptures. I've shared this with you before. Go through the Gospels. Every time Jesus had compassion on somebody, he acted. Compassion demands action, that we do something about it. Paul goes on, he says, clothe yourselves, not only with compassion, but clothe yourself with kindness. Do you know what kindness is? Kindness is lending someone your strength instead of reminding them of their weaknesses. Kindness is being helpful. It's being useful. It's living love. I witnessed an act of kindness. I didn't even think about it until I was putting this message together. My youngest daughter, Reagan, and I, we went to Walmart down in Leesburg. And, I'm a fast-moving individual, right? And so I go into Walmart. I take my shoes off, my shirt off. I go into Walmart, and I get what I'm getting, and I get out as soon as I can, right? I just move. I go in for a purpose, I come out, right? And so I went and I got my 2 or 3 items, and I go to the self-checkout lane, and I'm ready to scan, and I'm one of those people, I got my credit card out already. I'm not waiting for the total. I scan my items, I tap my credit card, and I'm ready to go. But my youngest daughter, she saw this older woman with like 30, 40 items in her basket come up to the self-checkout. She had no idea in the world what she was doing. She's looking for one of the people with the big yellow smiley face on her to come and help them. Okay, nobody was coming. It was a self-checkout. So my daughter goes over. She scanned and bagged all of her items. She took cash, not credit card, cash. And she paid with cash into the machine, took the change, and gave it back to the lady. It was an act of kindness. And then as I was putting this together, two of our members here at Amazing Grace, they showed up at church to get some portals of prayer to share with their friends. And both of them were wearing this t-shirt. I volunteered at the Wildwood Food Bank. That's kindness. We share our love through acts of kindness. And my friends, when we live that way, man, we're living different. We're different than the rest of the world because do you see all kinds of acts of kindness? Not so much. Okay, we're living differently. Paul says, and I want you to clothe yourselves with humility. Humility is viewing yourself accurately. We're not better than anyone else. We like to think that we are. We like to think that I'm greater than you. I'm smarter. I got a more education. I've got more, whatever it is. We like to view ourselves better than everyone else. But humility is viewing yourself accurately. I saw this from Amy Carmichael. Those who think too much of themselves don't think enough. I love that. I had to look her up too. I had no idea in the world who she was. She was a missionary in India who fought for children who were being sold into slavery. And even though she died decades ago, her organization still goes strong. Or how about this one here? Good old C.S. Lewis, that great apologist, said, true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. In other words, we think of others and building them up instead of thinking of ourselves all the time. See, humility is recognizing the truth that we are all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. We've all sinned. We're all in the same boat. And the thing that makes us special is the truth of God's unconditional love for us. That's what makes us special. That the one who created us also redeemed us. That the one who created you holds you in his hands. You are loved and you are forgiven. That's what makes us special. And so for the rest of the world, man, they're our peers. We're no better, we're no different than anyone else. Paul says, and clothe yourselves with gentleness. Gentleness? In other words, we don't approach people from a position of strength or power. I immediately thought of my grandson, 2.5 years old. Right? I will get down on his level and I'll wrestle with him. I mean, I don't throw him to the ground. You know, I mean, I'm gently, right? I mean, we play, I tickle, we play gently. I come down to his level. That's what gentleness is. Gentleness is putting relationship over and above your power, over and above your accomplishments, over and above your position, over and above your strength, putting relationship over and above, your influence and your money or whatever it is. It's making relationship number one. And Paul says, and clothe yourselves with patience. Patience is moving at the same speed as the other person. Jesus says this is how I want you to live. This is how I want you to clothe yourselves. That when people look at you, this is what they see. Love and patience and kindness. This is what I want you to see, what people to see. And Jesus goes on to say, and bear with each other. And forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive not as they forgave you, not as the world forgives you, but forgive as the Lord forgave you. And above all these virtues, put on love. Like you'd put on a raincoat or an overcoat. Above all of these virtues, put on love, which binds them together in perfect unity. In other words, love is the umbrella over which all these other virtues are under. Clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, and love. And you know what? When we do that, if that's how we were to live, if this is how we would clothe ourselves, you know what, man? It's going to make a difference in our world. And how do I know that? Because that's what Paul did. That's how Paul lived. And now look at the impact that he had on our world some 2,000 years later. And so every morning Every morning, I want to challenge you. I want you to wake up, and I want you to remember to clothe yourselves. Pray about it. Say, God, help clothe me today with compassion, and help me to act. Lord, clothe me today with patience. Clothe me with kindness. Clothe me with gentleness. And when you open up those doors, Lord, let me step through and use what you've blessed me with to make a difference. Every morning, put on those virtues. And the truth is, we can't do it on our own. It's only the power of Christ working in and through us. It's Jesus who makes the true difference. But as followers of Jesus, you and I, man, we're called to love. To love as Jesus loved us. And when we do that, we're following.